Hello, I'm a spinning grey cube and I'd like to talk to you today about testicles. Again. The first video I made on this channel was about Nigel Farage's testicles and the fact that when he was in his 20s, one of them swelled up to the size of a lemon due to testicular cancer and he had to have it removed. Those are his own words, and why he chose a lemon for this comparison I don't know. It seems to me that a cricket ball is after all much the same size as a lemon, and this would surely be a far more appropriate illustration to augment the whole Farage populist nationalist brand, but he chose the word lemon instead for reasons which are not clear to me. Anyway, today I'd like to return to this subject in a video I'm entitling Testicles 2 But then I realised that before I applied the mimetic snow clone that is electric Boogaloo in a medium with the justified reputation for academic rigour of the YouTube video, I really ought to sit down and watch the film that gave birth to it, Breaking 2. And if, like me, you're only really aware of this film from the snow clone as well, you might well want to ask, is it any good? And I can't tell you that because it's a film about hip-hop dancing, and despite its clear skill and athleticism, that is not something that has ever drawn me to a cinematic experience. What I can tell you about this film is that everything in the film except for the hip-hop dance montages is rubbish. Okay, well actually maybe that and the costume department. It's fair to say that the costume department do know that it's 1984 and they are not afraid to say it. Now on the positive side, about 90% of the runtime of this movie is hip-hop dance montages accompanied by outlandish fashion choices, so at least they knew what they were trying to sell. A further 5% or so of the movie is people complimenting each other on their dancing skills, often employing the almost impenetrable youth slang of the period with phrases such as, "Man, those moves was fresh." In fact, I've decided to learn some of this unique dialect myself, in case in future I find myself on the mean streets of downtown Los Angeles and challenged to a dance-off by a man wearing a crop top. So why not join me for a moment? Listen and repeat. Man, you got some fresh moves. Man, you got some fresh moves. Those moves was funky fresh. 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 Funky fresh. By George, I think you've got it. Now, I'm guessing the script for this movie was about 8 pages long. The plot line involves an evil developer wanting to knock down a community centre, so the kids decide to put on a show to raise money for it. Which I'm guessing at some point must have not been a cliche. Don't let me put you off this movie, by all means watch it if it sounds like your kind of thing. If you just love 80s fashion, or men in crop tops. If you just want to watch a 90-minute pop video from a time when hip-hop, at least in Hollywood, had yet to discover rhythmic counterpoint or social commentary, go for it. Myself, I can't even really tell you if the dance montages were that good because honestly I wasn't paying that much attention. The only thing I was paying attention to when watching this film were whether there are any clips of dialogue I could cut out of this movie and use as testicle-related innuendo for this video. And on that basis, this film leaves a lot to be desired. Really, the only thing I could find even vaguely useful was this.
The kids really mean a lot to you, huh?
Well, who wouldn't agree with that sentiment? I mean, I certainly wouldn't like to lose one, like Nigel Farage did, for example. Am I right, lads? Or am I just clutching at straws and that really doesn't work at all? The only way I thought I could actually make any headway with this is if, from this point forward, and for the rest of this video and my life at large, I referred to my right testicle by the nickname Ozone and my left testicle as Turbo. So that's Ozone and Turbo. Remember that because that is going to serve as the setup for an extremely contrived joke coming up shortly. So anyway, testicles. 2. Now, it just so happens that when I wrote that piece about Nigel Farage's testicles, I too had a lump on my scrotum. It was quite a small lump. It was no bigger. It's probably smaller than a kumquat, in fact. I'd been there for years. I'd had it looked at, had gone to hospital, had it ultrasounded, and was told it was just a cyst. It was full of fluid, and it was completely harmless. But in hindsight, I can now see that mocking Farage's monorchid status from my own position might have seemed to have been tempting karmic retribution somewhat. And lo, it came to pass that that lump that had been harmlessly just hanging out there on the bottom of my scrotum for 10 years, just a couple of weeks after I made that video mocking Farage, I noticed some odd discomfort in the trouser region, and after a short rummage I discovered to my horror that the lump had hardened and swollen up. So I went to see the GP, and she asked me about it, said, it's 10 years old, it's a fluid-filled cyst, I've been told. Used to be kind of smaller than a kumquat, but now it's started to swell up, and she said, is it bigger than a kumquat now? And I said, well, frankly, it's approaching the size of a lime. So she asked to have a look at it, and I took my trousers down and said,
I'd like you to meet my friends. This is Ozone and Turbo.
And then she said,
You certainly have original names.
and I said, yeah, well, there's kind of a funny story about that, because basically in about 3 months I'm going to be making this YouTube video about this, and it's going to be called Testicles 2. So she said, you've got a lesion on your skin there and it's become infected. What I'll do is I'll just give you a prescription for some antibiotics. Don't worry about it. It'll go away within a week. It'll be back down to the size of a kumquat, maybe even smaller. Just get back to me if it gets any worse. To be clear, the ozone turbo thing, that bit is over now. For those of you who are familiar with the movie, let me assure you that my testicles do not follow the same path as these two characters for the rest of the story. For example, there is no point where one of my testicles falls down some concrete stairs and winds up in hospital in a coma, but is awoken by a kiss from a hot woman who speaks only Spanish, who lives in a cupboard there. Did I remember that correctly?
Hey man, come on, wake up. Hey, what you doing in there?
I don't know. What's she doing?
Maybe she lives in there.
¿Todavía sigue durmiendo?
Yep, nailed it. Also, even though a lot of my story happens in medical facilities, this never happens in it. Yeah, I mean, what the hell was that about? It was just completely gratuitous, wasn't it? If I was editing that movie, I definitely would have cut that out. Anyway, back to the testicles. I didn't say at that time. You've got to wait for the 2. So I went and got the pills, and then I went home, and then I took the pills, and I didn't worry about it, and I continued to not worry about it until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon the next day, when I was sitting in front of the TV, and I suddenly noticed that my ball sack was leaking. And so, as you can imagine, the first thing I did was I stood up, I took my trousers down, and I said,
Ozone, you've been off the street too long, blood. Gotten lazy. You lost your edge.
no, not really. All I thought was, this is probably entirely normal fluid coming out of my ball sack. I wouldn't worry about it too much. But since my doctor didn't explicitly mention the possibility that this might happen, maybe I should just give him a call and just check in. It's probably nothing. So I thought, well, there's no point in being unnecessarily gruesome about this, so I called up the doctor's surgery. I spoke to the receptionist, and I said, yeah, I've got this lesion on my skin. Its fluid has started coming out of it. I started taking antibiotics for it yesterday, but I just want to check with the doctor that that's fine and nothing to worry about. So is there any way I could have a word? And the receptionist said, yes, certainly. Well, I'll see if I can get a doctor to call you back shortly. So I'm sitting over the phone, thinking it's probably nothing, completely normal, nothing to worry about. Sure, the phone will ring any moment. How long's it been? Well, I mean, I won't call them back because it's probably nothing. Maybe I'll leave it another 10 minutes and then I'll call them back. Maybe what I'll do is I'll go and I'll put the kettle on, and I bet as soon as I stand up the phone will ring. Yeah, I bet if I leave the phone here, as soon as the phone's in the other room, I bet that's when the phone will ring. It's when I'm in the other room. It's bound to happen, isn't it? It always works that way. What I'll do is I'll put the kettle on. You know what will happen. Basically, when the water's boiling, when it's making the most noise, when it's hardest to hear the phone, that's when the phone will ring, won't it? It'll ring then, obviously. Have I got any missed calls? Well, yeah. I mean, I won't ring them back because it's probably nothing anyway. It's probably nothing. I'll leave it another 10 minutes. I waited 2 hours and the phone didn't ring. And then I called them back, and this time, instead, what I said was, "Hi, listen, it's probably nothing, but I've got pus coming out of my scrotum. Is it possible to see a doctor at short notice?" The receptionist said, "Can you be here in 15 minutes?" And I said yes, and she said, "Okay, I've got a couple more questions. Firstly, can you just give me your name and your date of birth? And secondly, why are you giggling?" And I said, the reason why I'm giggling is because I just had to tell a complete stranger that I've got pus coming out of my scrotum. And although I freely admit it'll be funnier if it was somebody else's scrotum, just picking a name off the top of my head here, Nigel Farage, I'm just trying to make the best of a bad situation here. The receptionist had an Eastern European accent. So I walked slightly awkwardly down to the doctor's surgery and saw the receptionist there, who asked me my name, giggled at me and told me to go straight through to room 4. But the receptionist didn't have an Eastern European accent. And what that seems to imply here is that the woman giggling at me at this point was not the woman who had fixed me a doctor's appointment in 15 minutes, who I had freely admitted to being amused by this situation too. I was being giggled at by the other receptionist, the one who'd left me to stew in my own ball bag pus for 2 hours. And that I found a little bit annoying. But obviously, I just walked through to room 4, explained the situation to the doctor, took my trousers down.
I'd like you to meet my friends. This is Ozone and Turbo.
You certainly have original names.
It's a different doctor from the one yesterday, so we have to do the introductions again. It's another female doctor, though. It's a little bit depressing when you realise that 2 of the last 3 people to touch your genitals have been medical professionals. Never mind. Anyway, she takes a look. There's nothing to worry about, she says. Keep taking the antibiotics, complete the course. Your lump should reduce back to the size of a kumquat in no time. And it was fine, and that's the end of the story. So, the moral of the story is if you get a lump on your man bits, get them checked out, but don't worry unduly about them unless you're told to. Especially if, like mine, it's kind of, if it's free floating or if it's attached to the skin, it's apparently less of an issue than if it's actually attached to a testicle. But in general, these issues aren't that uncommon, I think, in men of a certain age. In fact, the very first person I told this story to just said to me, "Oh, yeah, that's happened to me. A scrotum got infected, swelled up to the size of a grapefruit." And I said, "Grapefruit? Why? Why did you say grapefruit? Why specifically did you say grapefruit?" And he said, "Well, that's what size it was." And I said, "No, there seems to be this weird psychic connection in the human mind between testicular lumps and citrus fruit. I don't know where it comes from." And he said, "Well, okay, I was exaggerating." He said, "It's more like the size of a cricket ball. Is that a better answer?" So I said, Yeah, okay, that is a good answer. And even though I'd had the lump for 10 years, it didn't actually just shrink back to its old size. What actually happened was it disappeared completely after that event, which is fantastic. Although, again, perhaps not as good as if the same thing had happened to Nigel Farage. I'm going to attempt to do something now I haven't done before, a call to action. I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe and maybe comment on this video. Or even share it maybe if there's somebody who you think may be amused by this or just grossed out by it because perhaps they're just horrified at the idea of men wearing crop tops. Now, before I go, I'd just like to share with you two... Okay, stop. Enough. I'd just like to share with you a couple more things. Firstly, there is something I haven't mentioned yet that is really cool about Break-In and its sequel. And it's not even in the movie. What it is the trailers of these two movies. They have a rapper narrating the plot of the movie in the trailer. Look at this.
Electric Boogaloo's action dance, the best you'll get. If you like breakdance when you ain't seen nothing yet.
I'll finish you, your friends, and your whole damn neighborhood.
This time there is an enemy, so they must unite. Because to say what you believe in, sometimes you must fight.
You lost your edge.
Fine.
That should really be an entire YouTube genre of people remaking movie trailers in the style of the Electric Boogaloo movie trailer. In fact, I'm considering doing that for my next video, so if you want me to try that, then leave a comment below and suggest a movie you think I should take on. Alternatively, if you think I should do more personal stories like this one, leave a comment asking for that as well. Or again, if you prefer the more political humour I've done before, again leave a comment and ask for that. And what I'll do with those comments is benefit from YouTube's algorithm thinking that I have greater audience engagement. And then I'll ignore them and just make a video about whatever I feel like. And the second thing I'd just like to say is on behalf of myself, Turbo and Ozone, thank you for watching.